By the time I was about 8 or 9 years old, I understood about quantum mechanics. See, I understand about quantum mechanics.
That was professional full-time scammer Mark Steele. Now, he scams people by making them think that he's an expert.
I was very, very expert.
Quiet you. But he's not. Not at all. But he tells them he is, and they believe him because he targets people that didn't have any, education in that particular field that he's claiming to know all about. Now, Mark Steele has a strong accent, and you might not quite understand it, so I went to the trouble of putting subtitles and closed caption on this video, because the last one that I did, YouTube thought was in Vietnamese. Yeah, go look at it. It thought that Mark Steele's words were Vietnamese. So I hand-edited all of the subtitles for Mark in this video, and there may be some Easter eggs. Anyway, let's watch as he makes his claims here.
See, I understand about quantum mechanics, fractals. I understand how the whole thing's the matrix. I actually saw splitting the whole thing when I was about 8 years old. Never slept for 3 months. I was terrified, but I thought, I couldn't sleep at night. But that set us on a whole path of investigation. I was only very small, and then I forgot about that. It went back when you sort of like get over the panic of this thing that I'd seen, which I couldn't make sense of, and then as I got older, I started making a little bit more sense. And as the quantum world mechanics sort of sciences started to come together, MIT, for instance, would know there's no mass. There's no mass. It's just energy fields. All right. A lot of people find difficulty with that. It's energy, and so the science fitted with me.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
I was very interested in quantum mechanics from quite an early age. I saw splitting the matrix, and I basically didn't sleep for a week or so, but that sent us on a journey where I had to investigate. There was something I'd seen and I couldn't understand it, and I was terrified. And it led us to try and understand everything that the teachers weren't telling us. In fact, I was a terror at school. And when I got to like 11, 12, 13, I was hard work, because I knew the stuff they were telling me was incorrect. In fact, my physics exam, I just got up and walked out, because it was basic physics. And I'd already went beyond that. I'd already read about the quantum fields, and I knew that everything that they were talking about was basically bullshit.
So there's a few things in that little clip that are interesting. First, he talks about watching something called Splitting the Matrix. Now, I looked for this. I couldn't find anything that named Splitting the Matrix that was in the 60s, because it was when he was 8 years old, he said. So if anybody knows anything about something called Splitting the Matrix that would have been out in the 60s, maybe, post it in the comments here. Then he talks about walking out on his physics exam, and the best I can tell, that's his O-levels, which would be when he was 16 years old. So he walked out of the physics exam because he said it was all wrong, but in reality, it's because he didn't understand any of it. Because after this, he didn't go on to be a top-level physicist somewhere. He got an internship at a mining manufacturing company.
Luckily, I got a start as an apprentice at a mining machinery company.
So he didn't understand these things. He walked out on it because he didn't understand it. It was beyond him. He didn't know quantum mechanics at the age of 8 or the age of 16. It was nothing that he understood. Now, here, he gets even more aggressive about what he thinks he knows.
I never did as I was told when I was a kid, because I always knew teachers were liars. Teachers used to lie to me all the time, because unfortunately by the time I was about 8 or 9 years old, I understood about quantum mechanics. So when I went and did the whole basic physics thing, I knew they were just lying. So I sleep and dream quantum mechanics, etc.
Wait, did you just say you sleep and dream quantum mechanics?
So I sleep and dream quantum mechanics, etc.
He did say he sleeps and dreams quantum mechanics. He said that he understood quantum mechanics at the age of 8. That's a ridiculous thing because in other interviews, he has not understood even what ionization is, which is a high school level chemistry, basic understanding thing. He doesn't really understand any of this at all. I know that for certain. I'm so certain, Mark Steele, that you don't understand these things, that I'm willing to offer this. $1,000 to your favorite charity, which I'm guessing I've had some changes since I first recorded this to the challenge I'm offering to Mark Steele. In essence, he takes a GCSE test, scores a high enough score, and I'll donate money to his favorite charity. I will be doing a separate video just for this challenge with a certain cat who likes conspiracies. So be looking for that. Now, I am going to present here one last clip. This is Mark talking to Jason Los Santos. And now Jason, I think, knows a little bit more about physics than Mark, and he's just the interviewer.
LED lights are basically light-emitting diodes. It's a diode that emits, it basically squeezes an electron and you pop a photon off. And those photons are extremely bright. And how you actually reduce the light emission is you'd actually just reduce the pulse rate going across. You throw an electron across a gate and it squeezes it through the gate, and that's where the light comes from.
Well, to understand that, you really do have to know what a diode is, right? So if the light's coming out of a diode, what's a diode? It's got to be inside that LED light bulb, right? A
diode's a chip. It's a chipset. They're basically chips. They're complicated chipsets.
And here Jason set up Mark to show off his expertise. This was Mark's opportunity to explain what a diode is, and instead Mark said that a diode is a chipset. That's wrong. A diode is one of the most basic parts of electronics. It allows electricity to flow in one direction and doesn't allow it to flow in the other direction. That's a diode. Mark didn't say that because he doesn't know what a diode is. He doesn't know anything about electronics. He's even said that in the past.
I'm not an electronics expert.
That's right. He's not an electronics expert, and it's painfully clear right here.
And the diode, it's just the LED light, the light emitting diode. The diode is actually just a gate. All right, and you pull the electron, goes across the gate, you squeeze it through a mesh, and it breaks, and that's where the photon actually pops out. Now, the problem you've got with that photon, it's extremely bright.
A photon is like a little piece of light, right? Basically.
It's a bit of light. Yeah, it's a bit of light that breaks out.
What's the difference between a photon and an electron?
Well, theoretically...
Oops, Mark got stuck. He doesn't know what the difference is.
We can get into the whole quantum mechanics conversation, but theoretically, let's see in the basic physics of it, an electron's a lot bigger. The electron's the bit that goes around the atom.
Yeah, it's still not really big. Right.
That's if it's there at
all. I guess that's a relative question, I guess.
It's that relative. I mean, if we see it's a bit bigger than the photon, but, we're getting into some really interesting conversations, Charlotte. We can start talking about simulation hypothesis if you fancy.
Well, I don't want to make you bored by having to go over too much basics, but I just thought...
Jason, you're not making him bored because you're going over the basics. You're making him uncomfortable because he doesn't know the basics.
So when you say photon and things like that, that's why I say, well, tell people what a photon is.
Right. It's, the problem with me, I just come up with these things, and it's because you're right what you're saying. It's one of those sort of positions I've painted myself into. So I understand these things. So when I'm talking, I just expect that everybody seems to know what it is. The photon's just it's potential light particle, right? But I don't get, from your own perspective, we're talking about basic physics here, by the way. All right, yeah. We're not talking about reality, my reality, and the whole simulation hypothesis thing. All right. So let's see basic physics. A photon as a light emitting particle.
No, Mark, a photon is not a light emitting particle. A photon is light. Photons are emitted from electrons. Electrons are the particle that would emit photons or light when it goes from a higher energy orbit to a lower energy orbit. That's how light is emitted. You don't even know that, Mark. This is covered in high school.
Okay. Is all light photons, or is there some light that's not involving photons?
Well, all light is anything across the whole electromagnetic radiation spectrum. That's the light spectrum. All right? Okay. All travels at the speed of light.
Okay.
Did you see that? Mark couldn't even answer the simple question, are all lights photons? Yes, Mark, all lights are photons. Instead, he changed the topic slightly to cover up that he didn't understand. I think the interviewer here knows what light is and is now confused. Did you see the pause? He's like, wait a second, Mark is way off.
All travels at the speed of light.
Okay, so that photon coming out of the LED light is very bright, and it ends up entering your eye, right? I'm trying to get at what's wrong besides the toxic junk inside the LED module. What's bad about the effect of that LED photon on a human body or other kinds of bodies?
Right, that photon's extremely bright, and what it actually does, it emits more light in the so it emits more light in the higher energy spectrum of light. So the 450 nanometers, it carries with it, it's about 3.5 electron, can carry with it 3.5 electron volts in a photon. Yeah. Now that photon, let's put it like this: your retinal cell operates at, you've got a pH balance. It's a chemical process, but if we see it's normally in the minus. You've got a minus millivolts. Let's say about 41 millivolts minus. All right. And then you do get, you get a chemical imbalance across the cell, but you're basically a bit like a battery. All right, so your cells are exactly the same. Your cells are a bit like a battery in it. So, but we're talking about a chemical process that has an electrical charge, minus 41 millivolts. That's your pH. That's where your pH balance is about correct. All right.
All right.
I'm firing a light photon in the blue spectrum, so the 450 nanometers in that region, 3.5 electron volts. 3.5 electron volts. So we're going from millivolts to 3.5 electron volts now.
I don't know if you caught that or not, but Mark Steele was talking about electron volts and volts and mixing the two as if they're the same. Now, electron volts is a unit of energy, and volts is a unit of electrical potential or electrical charge. They're not the same. They're not equivalent, but he just equated them to be identical, to be the same thing. Now, many people wouldn't understand this topic, but somebody claiming to be an expert.
I'm probably one of the leading experts in the world.
Somebody claiming to have 35 years of research in the energy sector absolutely knows the difference. But Mark doesn't.
Now, your cell, let's put the cell like that. I've got a 3.5 electron volt photon hitting that cell. Right now, where the sunlight, which is extremely powerful, it hits it like that. All right, so it's immersive. It's a bit like being in the sea. So in the sea, you've got all this sea around you. It's buffing around, but you're not up against the rocks.
Right.
What actually happens with a photon, a man-made photon from an LED streetlight? Now, I need to do this, so what I do, I reduce, because that LED is really bright, I have to reduce the pulse rate of those photons coming out. So I'm gauging the electrons across the gate to reduce the photons coming out and being squeezed out. So what actually happens, that photon is hitting your retinal cell or your retina cells, because obviously they're in your skin, and this is what makes them phototoxic, because they're actually hitting that cell and damaging it because of the pulse modulation.
Oh my gosh, Mark, he has no clue. This stuff, it's nothing. That's just nonsense. A photon from the sun or a photon from an LED light is the same. If it's the same frequency, it's the same. There's no difference. He's just making stuff up.
And the body's designed for sunlight and not for LEDs.
Your body can lie in the sun. Well, not all day. You'll probably burn you and that could kill you as well. But that's immersive. So I wouldn't tie you out in a desert all day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Overexposure you're talking about.
Overexposure. That's pretty toxic. Right. Yeah. Well, it's why you feel sick when you've been in the sun. It's radiation sickness.
What they call sunstroke, right?
Sunstroke's radiation sickness. That's what that is.
Public service announcement. Being in the sun does not give you radiation poisoning. Oh my gosh. Mark, how can you be so wrong so consistently? Heat stroke or sunstroke is because you get too hot. And radiation poisoning, radiation sickness is because you've had too much ionizing radiation, like at Chernobyl. That will give you radiation poisoning or radiation sickness. Oh.
You need a certain amount to activate your immune system and do things like that.
You absolutely, without the sun, without natural light, you would die.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly. All right, because it kicks in all about, your vitamins, your vitamin D, your vitamin A's, all that's created by sunlight, and the interaction with you is an energy field in addition to that light.
Well, you got the vitamin A thing very much wrong. Vitamin A comes from dietary sources, not from the sun. But vitamin D does, so I guess he got one thing right. Well, anyway, so that was the ramblings of a madman trying to impress the interviewer. And it's apparent the interviewer knew more than Mark. So anyway, thanks a lot for watching.